Of the 4 children of Queen Elizabeth II, one is now king and another is permanently disgraced. Where does that leave the other 2, Princess Anne and Prince Edward? Anne was 14 years old when Edward was born. Their public appearances together confirm that she still behaves like a big sister. When the 2 were spotted outside St Paul's Cathedral during Queen Elizabeth's Platinum Jubilee Thanksgiving service, it's clear Anne was telling Edward what to do. Anne's stern expression and Edward's cheeky grin were immediately reminiscent of an older sister-younger brother dynamic. After the death of Queen Elizabeth, Anne definitely continued to take the reins of responsibility. According to body language expert Judy James, James told the Daily Mail that Anne was trying to emulate her parents for the sake and stability of her siblings, adding, "But the grief is clearly taking its toll, possibly more than for her other siblings who seem to be more open about expressing and sharing their grief and receiving tactile support from those around them."
The Queen has always been incredibly grateful to Princess Anne. She made her the Princess Royal, which was a gift that it doesn't automatically confer.
Princess Anne attended boarding school at a young age and has been a vocal advocate of the education system ever since. But Vanity Fair notes that the separation created a bit of distance between Anne and her younger siblings. That said, Anne and Edward did share at least one touching public moment during his childhood. As detailed by the Royal Collection Trust, Edward got closer than most kids will ever get to space when Colonel Frank Borman, the commander of Apollo 8, came to Buckingham Palace to visit him. Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip were there, as was Anne. Pictured smiling as Borman and Edward chatted, Anne clearly had a wonderful big sister moment, watching her little brother meet a real-life space traveller. Some recent royal weddings, namely Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's ceremony and Prince William and Kate Middleton's nuptials, were truly lavish affairs. Princess Anne's royal wedding to first husband, Captain Mark Phillips, was just as big of an occasion, Vogue notes. Anne looked stunning on the day with her bell-sleeved gown and timeless beauty. A sweet moment shared with her youngest brother, Prince Edward, played a very big role in the day. The bridesmaids and groomsmen at royal weddings are actually always young children, according to royal tradition. As such, Anne's little cousin, Lady Sarah Armstrong, was her bridesmaid, and Edward was the page boy. As the ceremony concluded, the bride and groom walked down the aisle of Westminster Abbey together. Edward and Sarah followed suit, fulfilling their very important roles. Edward and Sarah, who's now Lady Sarah Chatto, were both 9 years old at the time. Every family has a black sheep, but few rival Prince Andrew, whose connection to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein has permanently tarnished his name.
I mean, yes, I would go and stay in his house, but that was because of his girlfriend, not because of him.
Andrew has all but vanished from the public eye after settling the abuse lawsuit filed by accuser Virginia Giuffre. The Daily Mail notes that King Charles III would prefer his younger brother to stay out of the spotlight completely, but his siblings certainly don't seem to agree. Just 2 days before Charles's 74th birthday, Princess Anne and Prince Edward united to show support for their brother Andrew, inviting him to a shooting party they hosted. Charles also got an invite, but the eldest brother declined, and apparently got rather peeved at his siblings for extending the invitation to Andrew. A source told the Daily Mail, King Charles was said to be displeased that Edward and Anne had been publicly meeting up with Andrew, and wanted it made clear that he had not been part of the shoot. Anne and Edward had been privately concerned about Andrew and wanted to check on him, but Charles's view is that he should not be in the public eye. His Majesty was not thrilled at all. Getting along with your in-laws isn't always the easiest thing to do, especially when there's an age gap. Case in point, Princess Anne and Prince Edward's wife, Sophie, who don't always seem to be on the same page. To be clear, there's no feud here, they just don't seem to be besties. Body language expert Judy James told Express of Anne and Sophie, their body language together hints at differences that appear to move both women into rather contrasting states when they're together. James added that at one specific outing, Sophie's upright body language appears to become more girlish and keen to please with Anne, who herself appears to settle back into her seat to stare at the crowds. While Sophie wears a tooth-bearing, polite royal smile, Anne merely raises her brows and keeps her lips closed. In yet another instance, Sophie's characteristic giggle seemed to peeve Anne slightly, to which James assessed, This naughty school kid body language seems to have brought out a far more prim response from Anne. The 2020s have been a decade of considerable change for the royal family, at least so far. In 2020, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle stepped back from roles as senior royals for a new chapter of their lives in California. Prince Philip passed away in April 2021, and Queen Elizabeth died in September 2022, making Charles king. In the wake of such major changes, both Edward and Anne have stepped up their responsibilities. Anne and Edward are now officially counsellors to the King. With the passing of the Councillors of State Act on December 6, 2022, Anne and Edward joined Queen Consort Camilla, Prince William and Princess Beatrice as official representatives of the Crown. This means that the siblings can step in for King Charles if needed and act on behalf of the monarchy. The timing of the Councillors of State Act passing and naming Anne and Edward as representatives left little to the imagination. It came just 2 days before Prince Harry, who had been a councillor, and Meghan Markle's Netflix documentary dropped its first volume. It also excluded Prince Andrew.
Councillors of State and Regency powers may be exercised by the Duke of York or the Duke of Sussex, one of whom has left public life and one of whom has left the country.
Hello magazine pointed out that Harry would have likely been named a councillor alongside his brother if he had remained a working royal, but now Anne and Edward have taken on the roles. Princess Anne and Prince Edward surely have their differences, but they've chosen to raise their children in very similar ways, opting to keep their kids away from the spotlight. Anne is a mum of 2. Peter Phillips was born in 1977 and Zara Tindall in 1981. Edward and Sophie, Countess of Wessex, had Lady Louise in 2003 and James Viscount Severn in 2007. Unlike their brothers, Charles and Andrew, Anne and Edward opted not to give their children his or her Royal Highness titles. Hello magazine reports that Sophie once explained her and Edward's choice not to give their children titles by saying, "We try to bring them up with the understanding that they are very likely to have to work for a living. Hence we made the decision not to use HRH titles. They have them and can decide to use them from 18, but it's highly unlikely." As for Anne, she declined titles for her 2 children so they could have as normal of a life as possible. Given Anne's distance from the throne, it makes sense that she would keep her children's lives private. Express quoted her as saying, "I think most people would argue that there are downsides to having titles." When it comes to royal athletes, Princess Anne might be the most impressive. A talented equestrian who represented Great Britain at the Olympic Games in 1976, Anne now serves as the president of the British Olympic Association and is a member of the International Olympic Committee. Her love of all things horses, sporting, and Team Great Britain were once again on display at the 2012 London Olympics. Prince Edward, for his part, isn't the athlete that Anne is, but he has shared some sporting moments with his older sister. As noted by Town & Country, the Commonwealth Games takes part across the 54 Commonwealth nations, with more than 70 teams competing for medals. While smaller in scale than the Olympics, the Commonwealth Games are a big deal for the royal family, so they're often spotted in the stands, cheering on the athletes. During the 2022 Games, Anne and Edward were photographed together while watching the Rugby Sevens competition. Joined by Anne's husband, Sir Timothy Lawrence, and Edward's family, they happily enjoyed each other's company while supporting the Commonwealth competition. If one thing is clear about Princess Anne, it's her no-fuss dedication to the crown. But her steely demeanour cracked a bit in the aftermath of Queen Elizabeth II's death. There to comfort her was her youngest brother, Prince Edward. Such affection between the siblings was a rare sighting, and body language expert Judy James broke down exactly what happened for Express. She said, "The photographs of the royals collectively mourning the Queen have been sad, but it's the poses of a rather isolated-looking Princess Anne, who does look like a woman desperate to channel her mother's famous skill of stoicism and stiff upper lip, but quietly struggling, that are really upsetting." It was Edward and Sophie, Countess of Wessex, who were there to comfort Anne. The Countess even placed a hand on Anne's shoulder, a huge display of affection by royal standards. James further explained to The Sun, the Queen's youngest son and his wife, Sophie, appeared to be the most tearful of all the mourners during the service. Sophie watched with an expression of concern, herself clutching a hanky in one hand that she had been dabbing her tears with. The entire United Kingdom had to experience its first holiday season without Queen Elizabeth in 2022. Vanity Fair noted that King Charles and Queen Consort Camilla hosted Christmas 2022 at Sandringham Estate in Norfolk, England. No doubt, it was a difficult time for the whole family, including Edward and Anne. A staffer told People in advance of the gathering, "It will be hard, as the Queen was all they knew. Like most of Britain, the first year is most difficult, as it is always the first of everything that you notice."
We feel their absence at every familiar turn of the season and remember them in each cherished tradition.
Anne, Edward, Charles and other family members were said to be doing their best to keep traditions alive. They exchanged gag gifts on Christmas Eve and walked as a family to the local Norfolk church on Christmas Day.